Lindsey, can you say hello?
Hello, I'm very happy to be here today. I'm excited to talk about connecting in a digital world. I've been working remote for almost a decade now. Bit nervous. I'm going to try to go slowly and happy to talk to y'all today.
Well, thank you so much. Take it away.
Hopefully you all can see my screen and I'll get started. So I have to be honest, when I was first asked to speak, I was like, oh, I can totally do this. As I mentioned, I've been doing this working remotely for a long time. We all have issues with connecting with people, but we also all have relationships. But I got really nervous. So I did what many people do, and I really started kind of going down. Read articles, I watched videos, I asked people about their experience. And what I realized, I was really overthinking it, and that we all struggle with this at some point, especially in today's world, post-pandemic. We're constantly connected. We really rely on digital connection, but we can still feel very alone. And so that's what I'm going to really talk about today. Not just explore why this is happening, but also what we can do about it. Because it's really important not just to be around people, but to feel seen, value, and truly engaged in our relationships. So, if nothing else, I really hope my over preparation and nerves are useful to you today. So, I do know this struggle personally. Since 2016, I've been working remotely. But at the same time, I also moved to the Triangle with no one that I knew here. I just came with my now husband. So at first, I really tried to keep up with my old friendships, but I quickly realized some of those friendships really relied on proximity. They were built on convenience. It worked because we lived in the same city, we ran into each other, we would just be able to spontaneously grab dinner. But when I moved away, these relationships really faded, and I started to feel more disconnected, even though I was online all the time. I checked social media, etc. But then I really found a new way to connect. My best friend and I started doing what we call movie dates, and we would do these over FaceTime. This was way before the pandemic, so before things like television. So we'd spend some time, of course, scrolling through Netflix and eventually pick something. We'd queue it up, count down, hit play, and really hope that we got it right to this very second. Otherwise, everything was out of sync. It wasn't the same as being in the same room together, eating some snacks, having a glass of wine, but it really worked. And it made me realize connection isn't about geography or proximity, it's really about being intentional. So, reflecting on all the ways that we take connection for granted, I want, like, how often do we assume that because we see someone regularly, we are actually connected? That true connection, though, takes effort, and without it, even if we're digitally connected, we can feel very alone. So I'm gonna try something here. Really hoping that it can work. If it's not, please post it in the chat. Can you get your phone out and scan the QR code? Once you're in, go ahead and respond to the poll. How often do you feel lonely, even when surrounded by people? Thanks for putting in the chat. Sounds like it might not be working. Okay, there we go. It's coming in. So as these are kind of coming in, I know we have a few responses here, but also just kind of take a moment in the back of your mind of how this feels to you. So seems like most people are answering sometimes, which, really makes sense. Connection isn't about, sorry, I'm trying to read the chat at the same time. Connection isn't about, it's always there, all or nothing. It really ebbs and flows. Some days, we're really on top of it, we're connected, we had the chance to talk to people. Other times, life just got in the way. How many times do you feel like Either, you have a significant other at home and it just feels like you're kind of rooming. You're really not having that connection. So this is really where like small intentional actions can really turn the sometimes connections into deeper, more meaningful. So as we saw in the responses, it's clear many of us really experience moments of connection, and it makes sense. Because, really the way we connect today is very different than it was not just before the pandemic, but 10, 20 years ago. So why is this happening? In a world where we're constantly connected, why do so many of us feel more alone than ever? This is where kind of my deep dive started to happen. I found some research saying that women have been hit the hardest. Nearly 60% of young women say that they lost touch with at least a few friends during the pandemic, and 16% lost contact with most of their friends. Women also rely on friendships more than men for emotional support. So when those relationships fade, the impact really runs deeper. There's a few key reasons behind this shift. People are saying longer work hours, later marriages, moving more often, growing parenting demands, really squeezing out time for friendships. And while these friendships are usually built on face-to-face connection, the shift to digital communication and remote work has made these moments a bit harder to maintain. It isn't just about missing social time. Studies also suggest that prolonged loneliness can impact our health as much as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. It's really something we need to not just do because we feel better, but also because it will be healthier in the end. And there's another place where this connection is really fading, in our workplaces. Not every relationship at work is really meant to be deep, but some of the most valuable connections are really the casual, everyday ones. The quick chat before a meeting, the spontaneous lunch, the conversation that you get when you're getting coffee. These small moments really used to happen naturally, making work feel more than just a job. They helped us build trust, feel like part of a team, made collaboration easier. These connections do more than just make work enjoyable. They introduce us to new ideas, help us grow professionally, and even open doors to new opportunities. But these moments are disappearing. I have another question for you. How many of you have felt that workplace relationships today feel more like transactions than real connections? So with remote and hybrid work, conversations are scheduled, meetings are efficient, and communication is short and to the point. While that may be great for productivity, it really leaves little room for unplanned moments that make workplaces feel more human. And that impact is real. Studies are showing that employees today feel lonelier and more disconnected than ever before. Work has become something we log into, not a place where we feel a sense of. We don't need to be best friends with our coworkers, but when workplace connection fades, work itself is feeling emptier. And finally, before I move on, I really want to pause. We talk more than ever. Technology makes it effortless to stay in touch. A message here, quick check-in there. We can reach anyone, anytime across the globe. But something's really missing. We're always connected, yet somehow we're missing real connection. We're not disconnected, but we aren't truly connecting either. So again, think about this. When was the last time you had a real meaningful conversation? So I know when I asked myself that question, I can go back. So when was the last time you had a real meaningful conversation? When I asked myself this, it was really hard to answer. And it's just really a reminder of how important our conversations, our relationships can be. I alluded to this a little bit, but connection isn't just nice to have, it's an important factor for our well-being, success, and longevity. When we connect with others, our brains release three hormones. I kind of chemicals, hormones. Abby, I know you're on the line. You can correct me later. But they directly impact how we feel and function. There's dopamine, which is the motivation and reward hormone. It reinforces behaviors by creating a sense of pleasure and accomplishment. It kicks in when we receive recognition, appreciation, a simple good job. And so it makes us more likely to repeat positive behaviors. Serotonin is the mood stabilizer. It helps us regulate mood, reduce stress, foster feelings of well-being and stability. When we feel valued and supported, our relationships, serotonin levels increase, improving overall mental and emotional health. And finally, oxytocin is the bonding and trust hormone. It's often called the cuddle hormone. It strengthens our sense of connection and emotional security in relationships. It's released through social bonding moments, whether in person or even through a meeting. And as I talked about earlier, workplace connections are fading. But why does it matter? Why should we care about those casual connections at work? It isn't just about being social. It directly impacts our engagement, performance, and well-being. You see a trend here, well-being is really important connection. We feel connected at work, we're motivated, engaged, likely to stay. Stronger workplace relationships make us better at what we do. They help us share ideas, navigate challenges, collaborate. Feeling connected reduces stress and burnout. Those meaningful relationships at work, those who have them report higher job satisfaction and lower stress levels. Psychological safety also plays a major role. When people feel safe to speak up, ask questions, make mistakes without judgment, they contribute more and feel more engaged. There was research in the Harvard Business Review saying that employees in these safe workplaces reported 76% more engagement. They experienced 50% higher productivity, and they're also 67% less likely to leave the job. When we create this environment where people feel valued, supported, and able to show up authentically, be who they are, they're not just more engaged, they're also happier and more invested. And one more thing that's super important, I feel like, not just for every employee, but especially for women, is that it creates the opportunity for mentorships, collaborations, career growth. That doesn't happen without connection. And beyond our work and our personal relationships, connection really serves as a buffer against stress, burnout, and loneliness. There's an 85-year study done by Harvard, and it is based on a cohort of men, to be honest. But their findings about the power of relationships is really revealing. Those that maintained connections were not only happier, but healthier and lived longer. I found this really interesting, but the quality of close relationships were really key. The researchers were able to look back at the cohort and predict who would be healthiest in their 80s based on their satisfaction with their relationships in their 50s. And something else that kind of keeps coming up a lot more that I've been hearing about in my work is brain health. And they found that brain health was maintained longer among the men who had people they could count on when times off. So if it's good for our happiness, good for our work, good for our physical and mental health, the question isn't why it matters, but how do we build more of it? We know it's becoming harder to maintain connections, but the good news is it doesn't take grand gestures or endless free time to rebuild. Small intentional actions done consistently are where we truly make a difference. I'm going to share some practical tips, simple tricks, and easy to apply ideas to help you rebuild relationships in a way that's meaningful, sustainable, and works in both your personal and professional lives. So I'm sorry I'm talking so much here. I'm going to try to slow it down, add some more stuff in. Where I really want to start is starting small. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just really needs to be intentional. We often think that staying connected requires big time commitment. long phone calls, planned visits, deep conversations. Yes, those moments matter, but what really sustains the relationships are small everyday moments. Quick thinking of you, try sending a voice memo instead of a typed message, or better yet, a video to share something that just happened in your life. And a simple, I appreciate you. What's fascinating is people consistently underestimate how much their outreach is appreciated. Studies are showing that even a short message can make someone feel valued and seen. But we often hesitate. We assume people are too busy, that it's been too long, that our message won't mean much, so we don't send it. My first tip that I'm going to share with you is the 3-minute connection rule. Each day, take just 3 minutes to reach out to someone. That's it. Don't overthink it, just do it. This can be done in both the work space, but also personal relationships. It's about really, but are you looking for one more geared toward the workplace? What I have here is what I want to call the 1-minute appreciation challenge. So think of a coworker, work friend, send them a quick message of appreciation. Studies are showing that when people feel recognized and appreciated at work, they're more engaged, more motivated, more likely to form those strong professional relationships. These quick moments of connection are powerful. But what if we took it a step further? What if we created intentional rituals that make staying connected feel natural rather than something we have to remember to do? So I think you all can give reaction thumbs ups. How many times have you thought about reaching out to someone only to forget because life got in the way? Great. Every single day. I love that answer. I will be the first to admit I'm very guilty of this. I have to remind myself that connection is more, it isn't so much about having time, it's about making it part of my routine. So, how do I do that? Here are a few simple ways that not only build connection, but also really kind of strengthen those relationships we already have. The first is the connection calendar. You know, we're scheduling work meetings, appointments, deadlines. Why not schedule time for connection? It can be a virtual coffee chat, a virtual happy hour, checking in socially, really putting that time on your calendar. You can do this also with friends by establishing standing get together. It could be something like meeting on the second Tuesday of every month. Really keeping this consistent makes it easier to plan around and turns it into a sacred time for connection. Something that I found really fascinating going down this rabbit hole was that it takes about 50 hours to turn an acquaintance into a friend, and then about 200 hours to develop a close friendship. But here's the catch. You know, we're not necessarily putting that time in intentionally. All these little connections really do add up so that we can have those deep. That's why really the small, consistent rituals like scheduling time on your calendar, or what I want to share next, a connection anchor, really make a difference. So the connection anchor is really the people who we want to stay in touch with. Pick one person to check in with weekly. It could be a mentor, a close friend, a family member. This small act of consistency really builds trust and deepens bonds over time. I know that one way I do this is when I'm going to pick my daughter up from daycare. Each day I call a friend or a family member. It could be my mom, my aunt, my best friend, really kind of rotating that, but using that as my time to reach out to someone really helps because it's something I do every day. But reaching out regularly isn't just enough. This is where better questions come in. If your conversations are kind of feeling repetitive, switch them up. Instead of how are you what's exciting you lately? Instead of how's work, what's something that's been on your mind? These questions will lead to more meaningful conversations. Finally, one of the easiest ways to strengthen relationships is by showing up for others in thoughtful ways. Take the 5-minute favor. Small acts of kindness really go a long way. Even simple gestures like introducing someone to a connection, forwarding an article, remembering an important date can really strengthen these relationships more than we realize. If you have trouble remembering important dates like I do, set reminders for things like birthdays, anniversaries, big work milestones. Too far. Okay. So really kind of this is my last section of tips and tricks. Before we move on, really think about a time when a colleague or friend generally celebrated you. Maybe they sent you a quick thank you message, gave you a shout out during a meeting, or simply said, I appreciate you. How did that make you feel? Relationships don't really just thrive on staying in touch. We really need that acknowledgement and reinforcement. We talked about these small moments of recognition to really strengthen our bonds and make people feel valued. So 3 simple ways to bring back casual connection could be a virtual coffee challenge. I have started scheduling a few different coffee 15 minutes on my calendar throughout the month, really trying to connect with coworkers who I want to have a closer relationship with. And this really is no agenda, no reason, really just a time to connect and chat and see what's going on. These low pressure conversations do help me strengthen the relationships with my coworkers and even one of my mentors. But the connection isn't just about conversation, it's also about feeling valued. So this is where recognizing and appreciating others more comes in. Really sending a quick thank you, the shout out, acknowledging someone's effort can mean more than we realize. It makes them feel seen, engaged, and motivated. I know I really try to give kudos in writing at work so that not only do my coworkers feel recognized, but it's something that can help them with their career. I encourage them to save them, label them so that when the yearly reviews come around, they have this written recognition that can be shared with their managers. And finally is, so one way to do this is, that quick message, but I want you to take 10 seconds right now and write down a name of a person you want to check in with today or that you want to reach out to. Write it down somewhere visible, sticky note, in your planner, even just put a little reminder for later today on your phone so that you can really see it later and follow through. And the last part that's really important is knowing when to switch from the written communication that may feel transactional, that we're engaging in all the time, to a real-time conversation. Maybe you've been messaging someone for weeks, give them a call. You're emailing someone back and forth. Just set up a quick chat just to get away from the back and forth and really connect. And then maybe there's someone you've been meaning to catch up with. Schedule it on your calendar. Go back to that connection calendar. We may not always be able to meet in person, but that doesn't mean we can't be intentional about how we connect. Technology isn't the problem, it's how we use it that makes the difference. When we choose to engage meaningfully, we turn digital communication into a tool for connection. So before I wrap up, I want to hear from you. Just like we did earlier, pull out your phone, scan the QR if you have it with you. And it's really more about action. I covered a few different ways, so I want to hear what's the first step you're going to take. What really resonated with you? Okay. Not seeing them on the screen yet, but I think, write some of these ideas down. If it really resonated with you, really have this as a takeaway to implement in your the 1 minute appreciation challenge. I love that one. So finally, before we go, leaving you with really the key message is that connection isn't happening by accident. It happens by choice, and the small steps you commit to today can create meaningful connection over time. So thank you. Thank you for being here today and taking the time to reflect. If you have any questions, or want to continue the conversation, I do have my email up here on the screen. Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing now.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And yes, everyone, please keep all of those questions coming into the chat. So I'll start with this first question from Caitlin, and she says, as a new manager managing remote teams, what mistakes do you see managers making trying to make connections?
So I think one of the biggest mistakes is, as a manager, for your check-ins, your one-on-ones, it's not just necessarily the transactional nature, but you try to make that connection by asking questions about your employee, whoever you're managing, and sharing some things that are personal, but you might not reciprocate and also share things about your life, or if you're asked about it, it may feel like you're crossing a line, but sharing some about yourself is really how you build that connection, build that trust, show that you're going through something too.
That's great. Thank you. All right, next question came from Bethany, and she says, any tips on how to manage conflict in relationships at work?
Yeah. That one's always hard. And to be completely honest, I'm not great at it. We did have a speaker recently at one of our company-wide meetings. And one thing that I've took away and was to stop in your head of, take a moment, take a breath, really kind of get out of that initial emotional reaction to kind of look at it a different way. And then once you kind of have your logical brain starting to work again, then you can try to figure out how to deal with the conflict. And conflict sometimes really actually just stems from communication. So if it's happening over email, once you've calmed down, try to get on the phone to really kind of talk through it and understand. I feel like I've read a book about this because I needed to improve it, and I will try to remember and see what it is. If you want to email me, I will share it with you once I remember what it is.
Well, thank you. And continuing on with our next question from Kaylee, she says, I feel like since COVID, our new team is so spread out geographically that it's super hard to really even know each other. I think we try to share and try those get to know you exercises, but it seems very shallow and kind of forced. Any ideas?
Yeah, so this reminds me of icebreakers we have at different meetings. I'm part of an advisory board, and it always starts with an icebreaker. And it feels, again, as you said, very forced. So this is where we really need some of those more casual interactions, not something that's structured. Think about maybe, you're probably dealing with a bunch of different time zones. So find something that is in a appropriate time zone for most people on the team, and maybe just have a drop-in social hour of, hey, let's not talk about anything work, let's just talk about what's going on. Alternatively, maybe a bunch of people have pets. If you have Teams or Slack, set up a chat where people just share pictures of their animals throughout the day if they did something funny. There's ways to really kind of find different ways that connect that's outside of just the work or the icebreaker, that can be more off the cuff.
That's great. Thank you. And I think we'll have time for one more question before we go to our next presentation. And Melody says, following up, how can I strengthen my relationship with my manager?
Yeah, that one's really hard. I've probably had I've had three different managers in the past 4 years at my company. And I think the one I've had the strongest relationship was actually my first one. And what really strengthened that was sometimes we would be traveling. Again, this was done remotely, but sometimes, there was a work meeting or we ended up being at the same conference or even at different conferences in the same city. And just kind of reaching out, being like, hey, are you here? Do you want to get together? And I know that's not always possible. So also, I've tried to create these different meetings where we can kind of just connect, check in, what's going on. Not sure if that's helpful. It's honestly a really hard one to do because there is still that power structure. I feel like as a manager, you can try and create that environment, but if you're trying to go up the other way, you really need to kind of try out a few different things to see what resonates with that manager, especially assuming that they're not really trying to create that environment.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for sharing with us. So before we move to our next presentation, any final thoughts or words of wisdom for our viewers today?
I think really just try a bunch of different things. See what is really your style. It's going to be different for everyone, and also your relationships are going to be different. Our lives are all different. The time we can commit to it is different, but try to find a way to do even something small every single week.
Well, fantastic advice. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon.